Welcome, everyone. Hi. Welcome this evening. My name is Lynn Farrington, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm the Director of Programs and the Senior Curator up here in the Kislak Center. Brigitte Weinsteiger, the Director of the Penn Libraries, and Sean Quimby, the Director of the Kislak Center, both sent their regrets that they're unable to be with us here today for this celebration, and it's going to be a celebration. Today, we are opening two amazing exhibitions, the Movement of Books up here in the Goldstein Gallery and Material World on the first floor, curated by my wonderful colleagues, Dot Porter and Val Kremser, respectively, and also designed by Brittany Merriam, who's our wonderful director of exhibits. I think she did an amazing job on those two exhibits. They're really, really fun. Yeah. The synergy created by these two explorations of the materiality of books, examining both what they are made of and the various ways in which they move through human interaction, whether by turning their pages, placing them on shelves, or packing and transporting them over distances. Regarding the latter, having worked in libraries for the better part of my life, moving books from here to there, enormous portfolios as well as tiny tomes, I, along with my colleagues up here in the Kislak Center, are only too well aware of the materiality of books. These two exhibitions also span the centuries and work by artists and bookbinders from the Delaware Valley chapter of the Guild of Bookworkers raise questions about what constitutes a book. Thanks to Dot, Val, and the many artists and bookmakers from across time who made possible the many works in these exhibitions. For those of you who are not able to get on the 4 p.m. tour or have not yet visited these exhibitions, you're in for a treat. When considering how to celebrate the opening of the fall exhibitions, one name came to mind, that of Ellen Rubin, AKA the pop-up lady. I and some of my colleagues had the distinct pleasure a few years back, pre-pandemic that is, of visiting Ellen at her house and enjoying some of the many movable treasures in her collection of more than 11,000, I guess now, pop-up movable books and ephemera. It was a litany of oohs and ahs as she pulled one amazing piece after another from her shelves. Given the opportunity, we would have stayed all week. So I was thrilled when she said she would come to Penn and speak about her collection, bringing along some examples now on display in the Lee Library. And if you haven't already had the chance to see them, definitely come by during the reception following her talk. As part of the reception, you will also enjoy a movable treat tonight, thanks to the creative side of my colleague, Alita Arthurs. And thank you, Alita. Ellen has had a fascinating journey since she first discovered pop-up and movable books when she began reading them to her sons more than 40 years ago. In addition to collecting, she has curated, lectured, and written on subjects relating to her collection. I remember distinctly her captivating exhibition, Pop-Ups from Prague, which was held at the Grolier Club in 2014. Tonight, we will get our own chance to dip into Ellen's collection as she explores art and action in movable books and papers. Over to you, Ellen.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me back there? Okay, good. I come from a big family. I have a big voice. So welcome, everyone, especially those who came from out of town. I really appreciate your support and your love. Thank you to Lynn for inviting me and her staff, which has made seamless kind of thing. I will start with my library. I've been asked to talk about my collection. So I have moved from that house that Lynn spoke about, and this is a purposely built library in a 1-bedroom rental. It is adjacent building to where I live, so I have easy access. To protect the books, the windows are protected against UV, and all of the books are behind glass or in archival boxes or sleeves. The wood, the cherry wood, has been treated for off-gassing. So that's the best I can do in a library. There are almost 12,000 books at this point, but there's probably more ephemera. What you don't see in these slides are two closets. One holds over 45-inch 3-ring binders that are just full with ephemera. And the other closet has oversized books and all of the artwork that I have managed to acquire. There are 41 languages from Tagalog, from Tagalog to Braille. You can tag along if you want to come. As Icelandic. And so the language is not a barrier for me, except I can't read any of them. And I'm so grateful for Google Translate. The number one question a collector is asked is, how did you start collecting? I never knew there was a pop-up book as I was growing up, though I was an avid reader. And I found this book and the pop-up book of trucks that I bought for my sons. And what is wonderful about it here is my favorite spread, the car carrier, where you can actually recreate how the car carrier works. The Ransom House series from which this comes is very important in the history of pop-ups, but I don't have the time to go through it now. If you go to popuplady.com, there is a lecture I gave at the Smithsonian on the history of pop-ups, and it will go into greater depth. So I thought, like so many other people, that pop-ups started in the 1970s with the Random House series. Well, that wasn't the case, because in 1987, I went back to school, to Yale Medical School, to be a PA. And once I was, that's a physician associate. And once I was there, the Sterling Library put on this exhibition called Eccentric Books. Over 100 movable books going back to the 16th century. And that was a turning point for me. This is something I could get my teeth into. The catalog, as you see here, had 2 pop-ups on the end papers. It cost $5. And since I was a fledgling collector, I only bought 1 copy. It's taken me 30 years to acquire a second copy, and that's in the Leah Library. So what makes my collection cohesive, I hope? And that is I concentrate on process. Because my background is in science and medicine. I'm not an artist, I'm not a librarian. I am fascinated with someone taking their idea and doing a sketch, making a white mock-up with white paper and double stick tape and scissors, and then turning it into a pop-up book. The mock-ups are a treasure for me to get. They're very scarce. Scarcer still is original art. I call pop-up books the Rodney Dangerfield of publishing. They get no respect. The artwork was not kept, it was destroyed, or it never made it back to the publisher or to the artist. The nesting sheets are how the pop-up books are produced, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. And if there are limited editions, very often they have a specific pop-up that doesn't appear in the trade one. So because of the Sterling Library's exhibition, I decided that I wanted the timeline of my collection to go back. And the top of my list was to acquire an incunable. And it took me until this year to acquire an incunable. And I'll be showing that to you as well. Part of my fascination is with the mechanisms, not because they're necessarily the most complex, but how did the artist or the paper engineer decide that that illustration or that idea would be best done with a pop-up? And so it doesn't matter if the book can open to 13 inches. Does it make sense? Does it teach us something? To me, that's a successful movable. Because of the age of these books, they necessarily follow persistence of vision, which culminates in movies. And there's a book in the Leah Library that was done for the Oscars, a swag, and it shows all of the mechanisms as it moves through time. Nope, I'm not ready for that. Okay. And finally, cataloging. I had lunch with catalogers. My collection is entirely cataloged except for some ephemera. And that's done on FileMaker Pro. There are 25 fields that I felt were important to record information. That's the best I felt I could do. So what's in the collection? If you have to manipulate the paper in order to understand the story or the illustration, I want to acquire it. But I do have some that are not made of paper, and I'll be showing you those. I would feel very remiss if I didn't give you a short and brief history lesson. And this makes a big case for brick and mortar stores, because I was in Barnes & Noble and saw this coffee table book called Cosmographics. And I knew that Appianus had done the Astronomicum Caesarium. I'll talk more about that later. And I bought the book home, and in it were these two illustrations. And the one on the left, you see a flap, and then the one on the right, it opens up. And I said, oh my God, is this a gatefold? Look at the date, 11/21. I contacted the librarian at the University of Ghent, and I got what was clearly a very excited email back. Yes, yes, that is a gatefold. I think he was so happy that somebody showed that curiosity. I'm sure many of you librarians can appreciate that. Well, on the left are two books done by Matthew Paris, a Benedictine monk, and he created, we think, the first Movable. Remember, until other things emerge, you don't know. And this was a calendar for Easter. On the right is his Chronica Majora, which shows the trip from London to Jerusalem. You have to imagine that the trip at that time, this is in 1250, to go to Jerusalem was arduous, it was costly, and it was dangerous. And he used gatefolds in order to literally map the way all the way to Jerusalem. Well, the book was loaned to the Metropolitan Museum of Art for their Jerusalem exhibition. I went many, many, many times, and I contacted everybody I could. You have to come see the book. You have to come see it. We may never see it again. On the right is Ramon Llull. The dates kind of overlap, and I have no way at this point knowing whether he knew about Matthew Paris's Movable, but he used Movables to aggregate information. He believed that if you could aggregate all of man's knowledge, you would understand God. And he did that by breaking information up by the alphabet and then creating these wheels that turned. I show you this image so you know how these books, how the Movables appeared in print. And it was up to the printer or the owner of the book to cut them out and have a string knotted at the bottom so that the wheels turned, or it could be a grommet or something else, but to make them rotate. Here is my incunable, and it is a calendarium by Regimontanus, and he used the Movable also to do the Easter calendar. The calendar was so much better than the Vatican's that they called him to Rome. I don't know what happened in that conversation, but within 1 year, Regimontanus was dead by poisoning. I'm not casting any blame. I have no way of knowing. This is a second edition. The first edition had the very first instance of a title page, where all the publishing information was on the title page and not in the back. So here is the Astronomicum Caesarium. It is called the most beautiful book ever made. That was Owen Gingerich, the astrophysicist from Harvard, who said that. This is a facsimile, but because CBS Sunday Morning, which I appeared on, did this, I knew I couldn't improve upon it. Every one of the 35 Movables are actual instruments. The strings have minute pearls on it, so it acts like a slide rule. It is just a fabulous book. The dates for calibration were used for Charles V. And because Charles V was so, his birthday, I don't know if I said that, because he was so taken with it, he enriched Peter Appianus with a great deal of money and gave him the right to legitimize illegitimate children. Must have been a thing in 1540. I have no way of knowing. Going from the most beautiful movable book ever made to the humblest. This is in the Leah Library. So you already know that the Movable was created in the 13th century. I want you to picture the astronauts coming home from the moon, the space station, or from circling the globe. They must calculate their trajectory so that they land in the body of water that's agreed to. And they do that calculation on a computer, a 20th century invention. Well, what if the computer crashes? That's happened to most of us. They pull out the 13th century invention and they calculate it. This was done for Apollo 7. It's made of shirt cardboard, and it has a little slipcase that's also stapled. It's all in the Leah Library because it just tickles me terrifically how this goes. So up until I acquired the Regimentinus, this was my earliest book, the Sphera Mundi. And it's a sammelband. It has 2 other books in it. And what I love about it are the marginalia. Just this week, I read a scholarly paper on the Sphera. It was a very important book for teaching. It was created in the 13th century, according to the Ptolemaic theory that the sun rotates around the earth. And yet it stayed in print until the 17th century because it had so much good information. And here are the vowels that were in the book. On the lower left is an actual wood block, not from my book, but from one of these other productions. And I've had it authenticated. So I'm going to go through the invention of different mechanisms, and I'm not going to go through the effect of the Industrial Revolution on all of this, on creating a middle class, creating literacy, and affecting publishing and printing. That is in my Smithsonian talk. So here is a very early children's book. It's called a turn-up book. I say it slowly so I don't say turnip. And it's a very simple effect. It's 2 pieces of paper, glued top and bottom. The top one, as you can see, is divided into 8 parts. And all of the images stay integrated to the other images. So if you turn up one place, the image beneath it stays integrated to the one at the bottom. And then if you turn down the bottom one, you have a whole new image. And that's how the story moves along. Because the Harlequin figure was prominent in many of these books, it is alternatively called the Harlequinade book. Here is the first instance of the pull tab. Many of you must be familiar with this. Well, I'm grateful that it was invented, but Jean-Pierre Bray had no idea what to do with this thing. And so when you pull the tab on the right, she, on her throne, completely disappears into the floor. And that happens again with a house. But there were improvements as time went along. But this is the first occurrence that we know of the pull tab. Because of this, the Industrial Revolution and all of the new printing and children being literate, there was competition for children's books. And there were several English printers who invented many mechanisms. Dean & Son was one of the most important. And this is a first pop-up. Now you see it's not page activated the way we think of it now. It's pulled up by a ribbon. And here on the right is Lothar Meggendorfer. The Movable Book Society calls him the genius of paper engineering. He uses rivets and a single tab to make everything move on the page. And I think you've just seen, let me see if I can repeat it. No, it's not going again. But don't worry about it. If you go to my website, popuplady.com, this image is on it along with others, and you can use your mouse to make it turn. Now it's doing it. Okay. The first term, use of the term pop-up, as far as we know. And the book here is activated with rubber bands. This is not my copy. My copy, the rubber bands dried out and they broke, but I still can show you about this first use of the term pop-up. Just like the harlequinades, the flaps were very heavily used, especially for anatomy. It was in the 18th and 19th century that it was illegal to do dissections on human beings unless they were executed criminals or they died in the poorhouse. And here, the flaps just go one at a time, going deeper and deeper into the body. And it was a great way for physicians to learn about it. I have put a flap book into the Leah Library. So I mentioned process. And what better person to demonstrate it than Wojciech Kubaszta? Many of you know I did an exhibition on Kubaszta at the Grow Your Club with a catalog with his biography. And he was extremely popular in Czechoslovakia at the time. In fact, he never lived in a free society. He died in 92. But because he was so popular around the world, his books were translated into over 25 languages. And he decided he wanted to do a series of his own. And the figure on top in the middle is his first iteration of this. And he gave these two boys who get into a lot of trouble in all of the 8 series, he gave them Czech names. And then he realized that they wouldn't translate. So on the right is the first iteration of Tip and Top, and they had a dachshund named Tap. And you see he changed their hats, okay, and the cars change. On the bottom is a series of the different mock-ups. This is a treasure for me. It's not just the process, it's a window into the mind of the artist. On the right is the finished book. Every one of the 8 books has a unique binding where the illustration represents what's in the book. And in the back of every book is a puzzle, a difficult puzzle. You see 1962. This is only a few years after Sputnik, and Czechoslovakia was communist, and they really educated their children. It's amazing to see some of the things that are in the magazines that are for children. These are the nesting sheets that I mentioned. Pop-up books are priced according to how much paper is used and how many times the assembler has to take a glue bottle and touch it to the paper. Now, when I say assembler, that's because every pop-up book is handmade. They have not invented anything to make those pop-ups. They are all folded and glued just as you see it. And so in order to use the least amount of paper, every single piece that is in a pop-up is nested together tightly. Today, they do it on Adobe Illustrator, but even in the 60s and 70s, it was all done by hand. Another treasure in process and in the collection. On the right, you can see, this is Meggendorfer's book, You Must Laugh. And on the left is the lithographic stone from which it was printed. It's just a treasure to be able to show this. I have shown you this because this is the most magnificent little pop-up. It's 150 years old. Now. Betsy? I've actually made a QR code of this, and it is open in my library because I will never, ever open it myself. Why it's not opening? It's just nothing like tech support. There we go. It's quite fragile. You may even notice in the front right wormholes. And so I do not want to pull this tab again. Oh, still. It's stuttering. I'm sorry.
Try it again. Try using the mouse again.
Indulge me. Let me see if I.
Yeah. There we go.
Well, it's on my website. And I do have a YouTube channel. So I'm sorry I can't show it to you, but it's very, very complex and extremely fragile.
What was the point?
Excuse me?
What was the, why was that?
Because they could, because it's a beautiful temple, because they
Oh,
want to
it's
commemorate. Yes, it's a Japanese temple. So last year I did another exhibition at the Groyer Club, animated advertising, premiums, promos, and pop-ups. And they are mostly ephemera, but some books from my collection. And I was very fortunate for this catalog to have it movable. And there's the information about that. And the colophon in the back has flaps. So the ephemera is something that was made to be thrown away. I don't know how many of you collect your Broadway playbills, but this is Václav Havel. And here is a playbill of 2 plays. And in the end papers are the stage sets. I'm going to play the whole thing because I can't fool around and give you the abbreviated version of it. So it has, as you might expect, stills from the production. But then when you close it and flip it over, you have the other play that was done. And here is the stage set. So on the right is a little bragging right. No, I am not on George Harrison's Christmas list, but I do have his Christmas card. And it is signed by himself and his wife and his son. I haven't been able to date it, but I'm trying to date it according to the age of his son. I think it's wonderful that they choose to make their card as a pop-up. I like to say that if a picture is worth 1,000 words, a pop-up is worth 1,000,000. And this is a single card, an ad for Lipton tea. The top left corner, she's picking the tea. And on the right, they are packaging it. And on the left, they're pouring the tea. The whole story is told with a wheel and 1 piece of cardboard. And next to it is Tom Mix, and this is in the exhibition at the Lea Library. It's an ad for Ralston Cereal because he was their spokesperson, but this is a myriopticon. And when you turn the dowels, there's a scroll inside. In this case, it's showing stills from 2 of his movies, and then it gives the pitch for Ralston Cereal. I have many 19th centuries and an 18th century myriopticons. It's just a wonderful way to tell a story. This persistence of vision, getting to making a movie. It was a very exciting moment for me when I bought an entire shoebox of movable cards made by Beaumarchais. At Animated Advertising, I did a talk about the Beaumarchais department store, which revolutionized retailing. And what they did was give out these individual cards. There are millions of them, but there are only a few of the movable ones, which of course is what I collect. But look how complicated this is. The piece of cellophane is the moon for the light to show through. And it has a diorama effect. These were folded up and just given out to visitors. This is a very complicated movable to make. It's called a dissolving disc. And you see when you pull the string, or you can use a tab, the whole image changes. Now, I know this takes precision, because I took a class at the Center for Book Arts in New York City, and we made dissolving discs, and I really got to appreciate how difficult this is, let alone mass produce it. This was in the premiers and promos and caused the most excitement. You put your thumbs on the metal discs. You don't even know what you're exclaiming about. What you see when you open it up is your EKG. You've put your thumbs on the metal disc. This was done by Structural Graphics, who specializes in movable advertising. It was a insert in InStyle magazine for subscribers. There was a separate vitrine in the exhibition just for movable business cards, because I don't know how many of you have seen them. They're kind of rare. They're mostly made by paper engineers who have the skill to do that. The one on the left, when you open the card, the paper comes out of the printer. But the one on the right is a flexagon. And those of you who are familiar with Emily Martin's work, and she has something in the movement exhibition, she made a whole artist book of flexagons, and it just keeps opening ad infinitum, and every one surface has more information.
Wow.
That's the wow effect. Love to hear that. Well, every collector learns something. And I was at Paper Mania and saw this 3-inch diameter piece of paper and had the suspicion that her leg lifted. And in fact, it did. And she was totally naked. Not something, I have a lot of pornography and erotica, because use your imagination, what moves. And there she is. But I didn't know what it was. So I reached out to the American Antiquarian Society in Worcester, Mass. What is this thing? And they told me it's a watch paper. So picture your windshield on your car. And in the top left, there's a sticker that says, bring your car back to me, your mechanic, when you have so many miles on it to get an oil change. Well, watchmakers, if you picture a pocket watch, you press a button and the clock shows that it opens. If you turn it over and open it, you see the mechanism. So watchmakers would cover that mechanism with a piece of linen or paper. And then they said, oh, if I'm putting in paper, why not put my advertising? Make sure you bring your watch back to me. And then some clever person said, well, we could have a lot of fun with that. And so there it is. It's always amazed me how movable postcards sometimes have the most complicated mechanics, and they go through the mail. And so here on the left, no, it's the right. What happened to the left? This is a souvenir card for New York City, and it's my favorite mechanism. It's called the waterfall. You pull it down, and cascading comes all of these images. These are photographs, but they could be pictures. It's not playing the roller. I'm sorry. I have no control. Oh, there it goes. Okay. When you pull the tab here, the image changes. I don't know how this is done. Yes. One never knows. I don't know how it's done. I don't want to know. I love the magic of it. This is an up and down thing. So I said a picture is worth 1,000 words, but a pop-up is worth 1,000,000. And this is a great example. This postcard is after World War I, when the Hungarian Empire was broken up. You don't have to be able to read the languages on here. Turn the wheel and it will show you how the empire was broken up. The whole story is right there. This is Philadelphia. This is a postcard made by John Wanamaker for their expansion in 1911. I've never seen anything like it. It has a little hole there by the address that says blow here. And if If the crepe paper were not torn, the entire Wanamaker store would become three-dimensional. So there's a lot of artist books in the material exhibition, and these are representing the artist books that I have. On the left is a miniature book. Mary Limepool Adams did these miniatures. There's a miniature book society. She created or recreated the Globe Theater to house it. There are 7 spreads from birth to death with a different movable on each page and a quote by Shakespeare. The one on the right, I have never shown before. And you can see this Chinese artist used the flip-top cigarette box, roll 10 pieces of paper as if they were cigarettes. And in it are quotations from Freud, from Einstein, from Buddha. And here we have Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and he did a pop-up book. It is in the exhibition here. This book was never sold. It was only made for school children. And I'm sure you recognize already the work of Kara Walker, her silhouettes. This was done on commission for Peter Norton and his Christmas list. There are 4,000 names on his Christmas list, and every year he hires an artist to do some piece of art. I'm fortunate to have a friend on the Christmas list, and that's how I acquired the book. Some artist books are unique. There's only one. And here is Maria Winkler looking at Going Postal. This is an actual post office box. The code to open it is on the bottom. She put the gun in the front, so you know what this is going to be about. And when you open it up, there's an accordion printed simulation of postcards, each postcard talking about somebody who killed in the post office. You would have to agree that an artist's sketchbook is unique. It's one of a kind. This is from Wojciech Kubaszta. When I acquired this, I broke down in tears. I can only say ahoy and Wojciech Kubaszta. And so I thought I was buying a single sketch. And what came in was his entire sketchbook from when he was 11 and 12 years old. You have to think that this is very sophisticated for an 11-year-old. And you see here, this is the first in a series of 4 about Rome. There's another series in here about a sporting event. Just incredible artist. This is Regan Clapshat's favorite book. And so it's in the exhibition. I've gotten a lot of positive feedback. I am grateful for this 3rd grade teacher who wanted to preserve the indigenous culture of these Pueblo children, all done by hand, craft paper and crayons. And what's really remarkable is every single page has a unique border. There was a lot of love and work that went into this. It is undated. So persistence of vision, Dolly had to get into the act. And I didn't know that when I bought the huge folio pop-up on the right that comes with, in French, I don't speak French, a book about DNA, double helix, Watson and Crick, really appealed to my science background. And you can see in the back, some of those figures are represented. But the woman in recline here, in front of her, embossed into the book in Latin, says, more than the Trojans and Nixon, Marilyn is the greatest. Get into the mind of Salvador Dali. Well, I found out that this was part of a suite of 10 books just like this. And he was following persistence of vision. There's an anamorph, there are folded things, all part of his persistence. And it comes in this acrylic and metal suitcase. It weighs 65 pounds. I do not show it because I can't lift it. The handle is an old-fashioned telephone, and the 2 locks are fried eggs. I have to think he liked locks and eggs. I don't know why. More artist books that are not made of paper. Here is a Rubik's Cube, and every one of the squares represents a typeface, something like that. And on the right, a miniature book done accordion style for the Bay Bridge in San Francisco, and it's housed in a walnut shell. And here is the 18th century Myriopticon. It represents a play with 4 characters. And so each actor can hold the Myriopticon in the handles. You can see them in the box. And when they turn the Myriopticon, they get their dialogue. I love the box that it's made. It's just really incredible. The palm leaf book, and there is one in the video that maybe you've seen in Movement, but mine's a little different because when you lift these very fragile palm leaf circles, a figure from the Kama Sutra is in there. It's more erotica for this long palm leaf book. And on the right is a tin Mexican nativity. Well, artists, besides using those materials, they use paper in a certain way, and in some cases light. Many of you may recognize Bruno Manari's Circus in the Mist. He used translucent and transparent paper, but it was all part of telling the story. Katsumi Kamagata, I want you to remember his name if you don't know his work. His work is just exquisite and ethereal. He died this year, and I'm sorry that there won't be more books. And this little tree starts off with pop-ups as a seed. The tree grows, it grows leaves, the leaves come down, and finally the tree dies. But he uses the light to add to the shadows. Just exquisite. There is one of his books in the exhibition, but it's totally different than this. But remember Katsumi Kamagata, you've got to look for his work. Because getting the original art is so difficult, I will acquire something else that the artist did. So for Jan Pienkowski, I have fabric that he designed and stickers that he made, and from other artists as well, or their archive. And here is a recently acquired partial archive from Ludwig Bemelmans. And there's a letter there from his wife to a close friend saying he wanted to be cremated and have the ashes spread in front of Lane Bryant. I don't know if you know what Lane Bryant is, okay? But it was snowing that day. They couldn't do it. He's buried in Arlington Cemetery. He was a soldier in World War I. Look at the Christmas card on the right. Would you expect the creator of Madeline to have made this Christmas card? Now, I have no idea. This is the original, so I have no idea if it was ever printed or who it might have been sent to. But now that you get the point, I'll change the slide. The newest genre in my collection are maps with flaps. Last year, the Newberry Library had an exhibition on pop-up books done by Suzanne Carr-Schmidt, who is the new director of the Movable Book Society. She's just an amazing, amazing woman. And in the exhibition were these maps that have flaps, and they were of battle scenes. I've acquired a couple of them because I didn't have anything like this in the collection. And the one on the left that I've circled has 3 flaps. It shows the movement of the troops, where they were, where they should have been, where they went to. I don't know if these other maps also are of battles, but that's so far as what I have seen. And the Newberry had them also of battle scenes. It took me 30 years to realize that a scroll is a movable. I'm sorry. My Hebrew name is Esther, and I really made it my business to get the Megillah, and there is one in the video. But I wanted to wait for something really special, something that was illustrated. And I really acquired something much more than I expected. So this is beautifully illustrated. It's a silver box in the shape of a book, and it has semi-precious stones. The one on the bottom is a Hebrew book. It's part of a series, and it's an accordion fold that's housed in a matchbook. And I have several of those, the matchbox. And finally, on the right is the daughter of 2 miniaturists, And she has made a book using condoms. I wonder if they know. So the artist has a point of view, and it may be political. And here on the left is a book done by Ed Hutchins. If you know Ed Hutchins or ever received his hug, you love him, as I do. He's just a magnificent person. And he did this very colorful folder that fits into something that looks like a TNT explosive. And it's relating to politics. And just a little aside, I was in Botswana and there was a small shop and they sold elephant dung paper. And I bought a quantity of it. I said, what are my paper engineer friends going to do with this? And Ed made me this pop-up elephant out of elephant dung paper. He didn't know at the time that my brother called me Elephant. So I collect elephants. So this was just over the top for me. Emily Martin, if you've heard her lecture, I call her the Irma Bombeck of paper engineering. She's hysterical. She's just really fun to listen to. You agree? Yeah. And so here she's done King Lear. Please note the spelling. It's not a misspelling. And it's one of 5 puppets. The puppet is in the exhibition. And you don't pull the tie to open his mouth. You shove it up. And then his mouth opens. And that's all I'm going to say about politics. Well, I wanted to leave you on a more hopeful note because the world is in such chaos. And the artist book on the left has an accordion fold, prayers done in several languages and representing several religions, and comes with it a dove, a sterling silver dove that's a bookmark. And on the right is Ed Hutchins again, who usually addresses intolerance, ignorance, poverty, hunger. He's always looking to bring people together. And this he did with an angled folded accordion structure, which I believe that structure is downstairs in the material world. So I'd like to leave you with this saying: I hear and I forget. I see and I remember. I do and I understand. What do pop-ups and movables make you do? They make you be the energy to make you understand what this is about. It mandates that you open it and close it or pull it or whatever, and you have a better understanding of what the artist was going for or the idea of the book. So thanks to the University of Pennsylvania for giving me this forum, and I hope you enjoyed it. And thank you. Thank you. One more thing. The Movable Book Society is an extremely dynamic group. There are over 350 members worldwide. We meet every 2 years. We are meeting in St. Louis next year, St. Louis, Missouri. I don't know what kind of conferences you go to. These are young people. These are artists. They're pulling out their mechanisms. They're asking older people what they think of it. We have workshops. There are collectors like myself or other people who are giving talks. And it's also done on Zoom if you can't make it. It's a really dynamic organization to belong to. So I hope you look into it. It's on my website, popuplady.com.
We have time for a few questions. If there's anybody in the audience who has anything they want to ask Ellen while she's here.
You can ask about the pornography. A lot of it is well, people may not want to. A lot of it is Japanese, beautifully hand done. In fact, most of it is manuscript, and people really have a lot of fun with this stuff. Yes.
I'm just curious if you have any Cuban movable books. I know that
There is a Cuban one that's about cigars.
that's from Ediciones Vejía.
Excuse me?
It's from the group Ediciones Vejía.
I don't really know. By the way, if you have any questions about what you heard or whatever, everything is on my catalog and it's not all in here. And if you write to me, popups@popuplady.com, or just go to the website, I'd be happy to give you more information.
Thank you.
Or she can give it to you.
You had a question?
What's your current favorite pop-up book?
Next, you'll ask, well, who's my favorite grandchild? Yeah. You know, I really think the Movable that I'm showing you for Apollo 7, that really blew me away. If it existed as a published thing, that would be one thing, but the fact that it's made out of shirt cardboard and it's going to save the astronauts in a catastrophe, I just love it.
Question in the back.
So I know you talked about how you liked collecting pop-up books. Have you ever tried like making your own?
I have. We have workshops at the conferences. They're very humbling for a person like me. We have professional paper engines who go around and they kind of help us, and there's something that's pre-cut. But yes, and this class that I told you I took at the Center for Book Arts, yeah, I can make a pop-up heart. And I taught my grandkids, I can cut that out and the heart will pop up. I'm very proud of that. But no, I'm in awe of these artists.
Anybody else?
Yes. Is your collection open for visitors? Or
Is your collection open for visitors?
I do have scholars who come or paper engineers. So I don't want to say you have to apply, but it's difficult to show it, even show a part of it. So I'm careful who I show it to. But yes, I do have visitors.
As one of the catalogers, I'm interested in your cataloging database, and I'm curious to know if you knew what 25 fields you wanted to capture all at the beginning, or whether you added one later when you're like, oh, I should be recording this.
That's a good question, because no, I think I got the full 25 right off the bat. I mean, I took my time with it, you know, it wasn't a snap judgment. What I have added that FileMaker Pro lets me do is reports. So for example, for insurance purposes, the collection, the Kubashta collection traveled to Iowa for the Czech and Slovak National Museum, had to be insured. So I can create a report and divide things up that way.
You have a reference collection about
I'm so glad you asked that, because I forgot to give a shout out to Caroline, who helped me unpack 450 cartons of books. Okay, because I moved from a house to this apartment, and the reference collection is in the kitchen. All the kitchen cabinets are filled with reference books. So I'm glad you asked that, because I meant to thank her publicly.
Tell them you live in New York City.
Excuse me?
These are strangers. Tell them you live in New York City.
I'm sorry.
Oh, she was just saying to tell people that you live in New York City.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I do. New York City.
Pretty good.
So Ellen, I know you haunt all of the book fairs, but these days, where do you have the best luck finding previously unknown movables?
The real answer is anywhere. I have found pop-up books in Anthropology, the clothing shop. I just never know when I'm going to come across it. Yes, the book fairs are sure. People will reach out to me, the auction, and now there are auctions all online. I buy a lot on auction, especially from overseas, but I never know, you know, chance favors the mind that is prepared, and there it is, where I least expect it.
You have a new unicorn?
You mean like the incunable?
Got that? Yeah.
I did have something. I don't know that I could think about it right now. I'm sorry. Incunable was a big thing. I can't think of it, Caroline, sorry.
Do you also collect, these new sort of, almost 3D printed cards, they sell them.
The ones that are laser printed on the street? No,
No.
no, because they're so, oh, I'm sorry, they're so ubiquitous. I will get some from Love Pop if they really do something special. The two men who started Love Pop, are you familiar with them? They were our keynote speaker in Boston for the Movable Book Society. Both of them were MIT naval engineers. And they realized that when they design a ship, it could be a pop-up that folds down. Tidbit.
Take one last question and then.
Are you picky about the condition when you're, now that you have such a large collection? Will you buy?
The size doesn't matter, okay? I think because I'm collecting so long, I have an idea of what's really rare. I say that eBay emptied the attics of the world. And what that did to my collection at that point, and I was on eBay before it was public, really in the very beginning, it dichotomized the collection, okay? What I thought was so rare because I was so happy to come across it, that I find out it is not rare. So I understand rarity. And if it's something that's really rare, the condition matters less because I'd be happy to find it.
Like the
And then-
Wanamaker,
Excuse me?
like the Wanamaker.
Like the Wanamaker. I've never seen another one. It may exist somewhere. I don't know. And that's the whole thing about ephemera. What's going to happen years from now? You just cleaned out somebody's house. I had in the exhibition from 1826 a movable. That means generations saved it. It went from one to the other. And that's how we know about it. That's how we can appreciate it or learn from it. And things that are digitized and that are online, we're never going to know about it. Do you still have your floppy disks? I do too, but I'm a hoarder. Yeah, so.
Well, let's thank Ellen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Join us for the reception over here, and if you haven't had a chance to see some of those wonderful pop-up books, they will in the library. I will be there with them, and I think you'll be.
Yeah, no, I will. And there's a handout that goes with it that lists it.
In the library.
Yeah.
It's a different type.